You finished grad school, whether it was very recently or many years ago, with a wealth of knowledge and experience and information ready to conquer and make things great for kids. But there were things that you didn't learn. I want to talk about some of those, the nitty-gritty of working in the schools. I have 5 things and a bonus item that I'm going to share with you. What to wear. First, get a copy of the dress code, the district dress code, and if there's one more specific to the schools or the settings in which you're going to be working, and go ahead through those. That will give you some of the context or guidelines that you're going to have to keep in the back of your mind. Some will be very specific. For example, you can't wear shirts like this with your shoulders exposed for women. You maybe can't wear open-toed shoes. There might be a certain length for women if they're wearing skirts or dresses. Look for those details and keep those in the back of your mind as you think through the next couple of pieces. After reading through that dress code and you have that knowledge in the forefront of your thinking, now I want you to think about the context in which you're going to be working. If you're going to be working in early childhood or with young children, for example, sitting on the ground a lot or sitting in those little chairs, when your knees are like way up here and you feel like a little kid sitting down there, that might have some influence on what you're going to be wearing. If you're going to be working with little kids, it also will influence that you might not want to be wearing your most prized, beautiful silk blouse or linen pants. You also want to think about what you're going to be doing during the day, and you might have variety across the week, so think about each of those individual settings and each of the different activities there. For example, if you are actively testing kids nonstop, especially young kids, older kids, it might be very different than if you're constantly in meetings, high-level meetings, district-level meetings, leadership meetings, meetings with parents, meeting with communities, giving presentations. All of those will be different contexts, and you might tweak your wardrobe based on each of those settings. Now, put it in the mindset of thinking professionally. What is that professional? What does dressing professionally really mean? If I had to unpack it, I would say that it means that your clothes are clean, free of holes and tears. There's not graphic t-shirts. They're wrinkle-free. If you're concerned about that piece, Downy wrinkle release is fantastic. Some people swear by steamers as well too. Those don't always work as well for me, but Downy wrinkle release, and there's other versions of that, are fantastic because they smell really good. Just keep that in the back of your mind too. But the idea is your attire looks like it comes together. It's clean, presentable. Now just throw in there just that extra piece of context to think about also keeping yourself well groomed. Whether you have a mustache and beard and you want to keep that well trimmed, whether your hair is nicely, it doesn't have to be poofy and styled per se, but it's clean. You pull it back in a ponytail, whether you have it up in a bun, whether you have it down long, but the idea is that it looks well groomed and it looks like you put some attention to it. Put all those together and that is kind of a professional thinking there. Now, step back and put yourself out there. Who are you? What do you like? Do you like to be a little more colorful in your wear? Do you like to be more comfortable but still have that nice kind of well put together look there? Do you like neutral colors? Do you like jackets, cardigans? Do you like dresses? Do you like skirts? Do you like to be a little bit flashy? Do you like to be very sophisticated and trendy? The idea is think about yourself, put all those other variables in the mix here now, and then start selecting or deselecting items from your wardrobe. If you're just starting out, I would highly recommend you don't just go out and spend a fortune and buy a whole bunch of clothes. If I could do it again, what I would do is just go out and get a few essential pieces that you think would work, kind of those classic kind of pieces. See how that is. See how you feel wearing them, because that is very important as well too. See how they wear throughout the day. A linen blouse or linen pants might look wonderful in the morning, but they're not probably going to look so great later in the afternoon when they're more wrinkled and everything. So do a test run on all this. Then after a week or two, when you feel like you have a good metric as to what your typical workflow would be like. Then think about, okay, this works well, I could use this here. I could use maybe a couple other slacks here. I could use a couple different blacks here. You might be someone who just buys a really great pair of black pants, maybe several in the same color exactly alike, and then just vary shirts. You might be someone who likes a lot of variation, a lot of different color. Think about you, but test it out first and then go ahead and expand your wardrobe a little. Another part about this is your presentation, and I get questions a lot about, well, what about body piercings or body art like tattoos? Go back to your district guidelines and find out whether there are some regulations on you can only wear these types of body piercings or certain tattoos need to be covered up. Look on those regulations. You'll find some districts will have very clear-cut guidance on there, and some other districts will not have it at all. And then you just kind of give a little bit of give and take and see how things go from there. Real quick one. You're going to get an ID badge. Are you going to be a lanyard person or are you going to be a clip ID person? I know it kind of sounds like a silly thing, but think about it, and you might transition, have different, times you want different things. I was never much of a lanyard person because I didn't like something always around my neck. However, they are very easy for the fact that you just slip it on. Sometimes you can get really fancy ones, like Amazon has a whole bunch of different types there. Sometimes you get certain ones from your district or from your school. So there's going to be a lot of fun, different ways to be creative with having a lanyard. However, it's not always the best thing if you are sometimes intervening with students and having to do restraints, because having that around your neck, you're going to have to think very quickly, how do you get that off before you have to move into assisting and supporting a student? Clip IDs were my favorite. That's typically what I did. And even though the advantage of also sometimes having a lanyard is that you could put your key on the lanyard, I found ways that I could also put my key on my clip ID badge. I would either have it up on my shoulder, sometimes down in my pocket. But for me, that kind of worked. Again, think about those things. That's kind of one of those very trivial things, but something to be creative and play with. This is kind of one of those, sometimes I think is, for some of us, especially those of us who are more like introverted, this is probably one of the more uncomfortable of pieces. How are you going to get to know your colleagues? How are you going to introduce yourself? What I recommend is thinking about this ahead of time. Think about those key points that you would share when you first maybe meet someone in the hallway and they ask you who you are, or what you do, what your role is. You might want to already have a blurb that's about 30 seconds, one that's a minute long, maybe one that's 5 minutes, maybe has 2 points, 3 points, those different variations so that they're ready to go. And I recommend that you practice them, rehearse saying them so they come out very naturally, you're not stumbling. How many of you have sat in one of those meetings where they said, okay, I'm going to go around and I want everyone to say 3 things about themselves, or I want you to tell me about yourself and then your favorite movie. One of those kind of scenarios. And how many of you have been like sitting the whole time not even able to listen because you're just there like, think, oh gosh, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? What am I going to say? Sometimes we take notes sometimes. And if I'm the only one like that, and then go ahead and disregard that. But think about those ahead of time, because if you're entering a new position, you're going to be working in a different setting, even if there's new people that will be joining your team, you're going to want to have some of that prepared and really thought out. Not that you want to be canned or scripted, but that just kind of flows and you're not anxious. You can actually listen to other people when they're speaking. On top of that, think now about how you will have that intro ready to be able to share with, maybe for parents or clients or students, administrative leaders, community agencies. Another little piece is think about how you might share who you are and what you do through other means. Handouts, flyers, introduction emails, things you might put in mailboxes. Like I had a good friend who would make these little postcards. It was a little bit costly, but she would make little postcards up and talk about what she did, where she was located when she was at the school, so that she distributed those to all the teachers, also distributed them to the parent-teacher organization. Again, perfect kind of vehicle to be able to get your word out there, your name out there. You can even have your picture on there too. But think about some of those other mediums to be able to help that introduction piece so people know who you are, what you do, and maybe also what you don't do. And now another important piece of your day, what you're going to be eating. I'll start with breakfast. Think about your commute, what time you have to leave, all those kind of parts and pieces, and coordinate. If you're a breakfast person, which I highly recommend you have something but I know everyone's a little bit different there. But think about when you're going to eat your breakfast. How are you going to eat your breakfast? For example, you're going to eat it as you're walking out the door. Are you actually going to take 5-10 minutes each morning and make a nice omelet or a nice nutritious breakfast? Or is it going to be something that as you're driving you're going to be snacking on? At one point once, I actually just waited until I arrived at my office and ate my breakfast during those first few minutes when I was just kind of unpacking and everything. Coupled with breakfast is coffee, if you're a coffee drinker or tea drinker, if that's important to you, or as with me, it's required. Think about when you're going to get your dosage of caffeine to be able to be presentable and work productively during the day. So it might also mean that you need a travel mug if you don't already have one. Along then with coffee, think about what you're going to have available to drink during the day, whether you're going to have a water jug, whether you're going to have a soda with you, whether you're going to already come with some bottled water, or if your school has one of those wonderful systems where you can just put your water jug in, like in the airports, and it fills the water and you trust that that water is clean, then go ahead and you can use that. I love my water bottle that I have that also has a locking mechanism on it and also a clip. The locking mechanism keeps it from the spout from opening when you don't want it to open, and the clip on it keeps it anchored in my bag so that it doesn't fall over or I don't lose it. And then on to the good stuff of actually what you're going to eat. Think about your personal style. Are you a grazer? So you need lots of little snacks to be able to eat easily throughout the day. Something that you can eat while you're doing something else. Is it something you can eat and it doesn't make a mess? You don't need to prepare it ahead of time, which then links to the fact, what are you going to have available at your sites? Are you going to have a refrigerator to store some cold items or a frozen meal? And then if you have a frozen meal, you're going to have a microwave that's accessible and that you can use to be able to heat up your food. Or you're going to have to rely on your own lunchbox to be able to keep your food at just the right temperature. One little piece that I always also found and I often neglected was to think about having something, a snack, for the drive home, especially if you have one that's more than just a few minutes. Oh, this is one of my favorite ones, your bag. How are you going to bring all the materials that you need to do your job to each location? For example, how are you going to transport your laptop if you have a laptop? How are you going to bring your test kits if you have test kits? How are you going to transport all of your notes or your files or your paper copies of things or protocols? Think about how best to be able to do that and the quantity of that. Very importantly too, think about your buildings. I have a story to share. I once had one of those wonderful wheelie bags that was just fantastic because it saved my back. I had all my test kits in there, all my protocols. This is when we didn't have electronic rating scales. It was filled and it was heavy. That was fantastic for me getting to and from my different sites until I hit a school that had stairs and my office was on the 3rd floor and the elevator was not something that you would want to ride in on a regular basis. That put a crimp in my style. But really, think about the bag. This is a fun time for some of you. If you're coming out of grad school, you might want to ditch your backpack, but I wouldn't do it too quickly because backpacks really are great for carrying all the materials. You just might want to maybe transition to a slightly fancier one. I have one that I love. I think it actually is supposed to be functional like as a diaper bag too, but it's fantastic and I absolutely love it. I will, if I remember, I'll put the link down below to it. I believe it's still available on Amazon. It was around $40 or so. Or you might want to have a nice, beautiful leather bag. As I've been saying all along, be you, make it work in your context, and be ready to be able to see what truly works. I would think twice about going and purchasing a very expensive bag until you've actually worked at your sites, because you might find out that, yeah, this is just not working. I don't have a place at this site to be able to store all this, so I have to carry all this more, or I don't have a really good safe place to be able to keep this large bag when I'm not in my office, which links to the next little piece to think about. Are you going to have a locked drawer or place to be able to leave items of high value, such as a purse or a wallet if you don't have it in your back pocket, or your phone when you're not bringing it with you someplace else? So when you are leaving your office or the space in which you work, even if it's not an office, I've had very strange office spaces, whole nother story. Is there some place to be able to leave those items so you're not having to lug them around with you? And if there isn't, you might really have to think about condensing them, or in one situation what I had to do was I had to leave most of my things out in the car so I didn't have to worry about having my wallet someplace where I couldn't keep it locked. So consider those pieces there as you make that fun choice of thinking about the bag. Another thing to think about, and I'm going to cover this in a future video because it's something that I am very much having to deal with right now, is already have the foresight to think about balancing work-life. What are you going to do? What is it going to take? What strategies? What's your big take on that to be able to know that you can keep your longevity and your freshness in your career? I'll have that video. I'll link it once it is posted, but that's a really critical piece. I don't want to belittle that. So this has been really helpful, fun, and you find that this has been some content that's kind of hitting on some of the areas. If you have other thoughts, other contents, other questions, please leave that in the comments down below. I'd love to be able to continue on and discuss other areas. The breadth of this is so many different things that we could truly talk about. If this is also content that's been helpful, you kind of appreciate it, go ahead and hit the like button, do the subscribe. If this is an area that you want to be able to continue to be participating with, all those kinds of things. To be able to wrap it up now, the bonus item. I think for me, this is, if you have the luxury of this is one of the most fun parts, is setting up your office. I say this knowing that for many years I did not have a consistent office. My office was a conference room at each of my schools. So I say that knowing that there's going to be a part of our population that you're going to sit here and be like, thanks, no fun. And I'm very sorry about that, but maybe we can think about how we can help create the environment when you are in the conference room that it's kind of yours. But for those of you who do get a set office that you can kind of call home, even if you're sharing it with the social worker or the guidance counselor or the speech language pathologist on alternating days or even on the same day, what can you do to be able to make that space yours? And also inviting to others. Think about your population. Your office is going to be set very differently probably if you're working in an elementary school versus if you're working in a high school. Your office is going to be set up very differently if you're holding meetings in that space, or if you are also bringing parents into that space on a regular basis. You might have different levels of confidentiality on what you keep out and about. So now let yourself dream a little bit. What would you do to be able to help a student who's having a tough day? What kind of, would you have little trinkets? Would you have little cool down toys? Would you have fidget toys? Would you have, in one case I used to have stuffed animals. I don't know now, given pandemic pieces there. We do sadly have to think about that. But the idea is, what can you do to create that space to be yours and functional, and to be able to make it open for everyone? To be able to make it yours, to make it functional, and to make it a place that you want to go and sit and spend many hours in. I'm having a fantastic time doing this, and I hope that it's helpful for everyone else too. And I look forward to all your thoughts and comments and feedback, and I want to be able to keep creating content for all of you. It's been so helpful for me. Your questions also make me think about things a little bit differently. I'm just so excited to be here. I'm going to leave a lot of links down below. Please engage and welcome. Thank you. This is meaning so much to so many, including myself.